Hey guys, and welcome to part 3 of this Codex Deathwatch review. In this video I'm going to analyze the considerations that you make when you're building a list for Deathwatch. Whether to go with a CAD or a Black Spear Strike Force, and then once you've made that decision, how are we going to write that list? So as I kind of said in the last video, I mentioned that I kind of prefer the CAD for Deathwatch, but that doesn't mean everybody's going to prefer a CAD. And I think it's worth kind of going through very objectively and breaking down exactly why a CAD, in my opinion, is better and what are the pros of each, the benefits of each. So let's start with the Black Spear Strike Force. What are the benefits of taking your kill teams and even just units of veterans that you can take in a Black Spear Strike Force? What is the benefit of doing it in that format over a CAD? The first and foremost benefit, which perhaps I didn't stress enough in the previous video, was the doctrines that you get inside the kill teams. So, in your, for example, it's not this document. In this document, if we go to kill teams, we'll see that all our kill teams have various doctrines. So, for example, the Pegasus kill team has the doctrine, reroll any fail to wound and armor pen rolls for non-vehicle models from this formation that are targeting units with a HQ battlefield roll. Now, all the different kill teams have the different roles respectively. So you have kill teams that are good against rerolls against fast attack, rerolls against elites. Then you've got the Aquila kill team, which if I was running it, I would take the Aquila, which has rerolls of 1, but against everything. So the Aquila kill team gets rerolls of 1, obviously for its mission tactics, but then into wound for its doctrine, it gets rerolls of 1, for armor pen and wound rolls as well against everything. So that's something that a CAD doesn't get, right? So sure, a CAD will get rerolls to hit, but then, with your strength 9 frag cannons and stuff like that, and your, AP3 strength 4 bolters, your doctrines, your kill teams will be getting rerolls to wound as well. And that's very relevant and very powerful. And for me, that's probably the most powerful element of the Black Spear Strike Force and spamming kill teams. Then you get obviously the composite unit benefit. Even if you kind of do want to use lots of drop pods and you're not particularly keen on deep striking them on turn 2 onwards, you're going to lose the bikes, right? Because you can't drop pod in bikes, but you can't drop pod in Vanguard veterans either because they have to have jump packs. But you can drop pod units with the Terminators attached, so you can get your veterans with 1 or 2 Terminators in the unit that can tank for the veterans. So like I mentioned earlier, the power of Storm Shields, you can run composite units with 2-up saves and Storm Shields. So you can kind of have, scatter and sequence the units even more, in a more complex way to make it even more difficult for your opponent to allocate, efficient shooting to evaporate the unit. So that's definitely a benefit. Using the Terminators as tanks is great. As is the additional mission tactic you get for free, ability to have an additional mission tactic change. So those benefits I think are really good. Like you look at that, you say, oh, that's really awesome. Terminators in drop pods, blah, blah, blah. Doctrines really powerful. I totally agree. And I can totally understand why somebody might want to run that style of list. What don't you get? And rather than look at the deficits of this, I think the deficits of that are can be manifested through the positives of this. So if we look at the positives of the CAD just get obsec on all their kill teams. So where the kill teams, I should say veteran squads, because that's a little bit misleading. So the veteran squads in the CAD get obsec. So where your veteran squads in a Black Spear Strike Force will have Terminators and will have doctrines, the veteran squads in the CAD will be getting objective secured on their drop pod and on their unit, which I think is very relevant. I'm not going to say that alone is better than the doctrines, because maybe the output of more damage is better than obsec. But when you're dropping multiple drop pods, on turn 1, on your opponent's objectives, when you have obsec on those drop pods, it really makes it hard for your opponent in their turn 1 or turn 2 if they, let's just say you're running ITC, or it doesn't really matter whether you're running ITC or you're running just normal tactical cards. But if they're drawing, capture objective X, that is one of their own objectives, if you've just put an objective secured pod and an objective secured veteran unit on that objective, it suddenly makes it a lot harder for them to score that card. Now they have to think about, now I have to kill that unit of veterans, which let's be honest, they probably wanted to kill that anyway. But then they have to think about that drop pod as well. And when you're putting 20 or 30 or 35 or 40, Marines on your opponent's doorstep, the last thing they have time to do is kill a 3 hull point AV-12 vehicle. So the OBSEC drop pods, I think that is the most important part of this little equation here. That is a really important benefit of the CAD. Another important thing that you can overlook is that when you're taking a bunch of drop pods, if you're taking them in the Black Spear Strike Force, you can't actually take them as empty drop pods. You have to, your drop pods have to be purchased for units. So if you want empty drop pods, you have to have them in a CAD that you can use as your back pods, so that you can front load your full pods on turn 1, and then the pods that are on the back half of the drop pod assault rule can be minimal and often can be empty. You can mix these. I think there's a lot of merit to running a CAD and a Black Spear Strike Force. In fact, there's no reason why you can't do a combination of these. I think there's a lot of merit to that as well. To kind of get the strengths of both. You can run a kill team with doctrines, and you can also use the fast attack drop pods to kind of as your back pods and stuff like that. And you can also have some OBSEC ones as well. But the most important part of the CAD, and I left this till last, is that the CAD is where you can take the MSU. You can't take the single Terminators, single bike, single Vanguard veterans in the Black Spear Strike Force. And I know that a lot of missions, missions that, for example, kill point missions will hurt MSU, and missions like the Scouring will hurt, taking lots of independent bike units. However, I think the benefits of this MSU format are definitely outweigh the negatives. So with that in mind, let's move to the list I've written and have a look at the way in which I've written a CAD list for Deathwatch. So you can see here, I'm using the Menza triboard format document, even though this list is not written using the Menza triboard format actual rules. We have here, I've got 2 CADs. So this list, the reason why I have 2 CADs in this list is because I am utilizing a lot of elite slots. I'm utilizing a total of 6 elite slots here. So let's just go through the list. I've started with a Watchmaster as my HQ in one of my CADs. The reason why I went with a Watchmaster is because I wanted to have a tanking IC, like a powerful tank in my prominent veteran unit. So you can see here I've got this veteran unit is my main unit. That's a 6-strong veteran unit that has double storm shield, and this unit will basically house my Watchmaster and my Libby. And I wanted that unit to have a 2-up save tank with invuln as well, and multiple wounds. So my Watchmaster is providing that. He's also providing, some quite powerful close combat ability. He's got the Guardian Spear is quite strong, strength 5, AP 2, and initiative. And he's also holding the Beacon Angelus. So when after that drop pod comes down, then my other drop pods can drop accurately, close to that if I want. And he also provides accurate deep strike the following turns for my Terminators when they deep strike as well. So I start with the Watchmaster. My HQ for my second CAD, I've just gone with a level 2 Libby. You can't go wrong with the level 2 Libby. I should note there that he would have with the Force Axe, right? I think you always give your Libby a Force Axe unless there's a really good reason not to. He gives a bit more AP2 to the unit, and of course a Force Weapon, which is really good against big Gribblies, multi-wound models, etc. Then I have my first veteran unit. So my first veteran unit I've run with 10 veterans. And I've gone with 4 frag cannons in the unit of 10 and 2 storm shields. Now, most of the time, I feel that this unit will be combat squatting into 2 units of 5, each with 2 frag cannons and a storm shield. And that will allow me to disperse my firepower, disperse my threat level quite evenly and homogeneously. Frag cannons are pretty good against everything. whether it's chaff units, premium units, vehicles, etc. So I think it's quite reasonable to split them up into two units of 2. But by having them there, and with 4, you could in certain situations just bomb the one, put them in one unit. Sometimes you might not combat squad them. If it's a kill points mission, you might decide not to combat squad them. You might just want to insulate those frag cannons more and just drop them as one unit, or drop the 4 frag cannons in one of the combat squad units. There's a lot of configurations on how you want to do it, but the options are there. The veterans that don't have frag cannons, of course, will have both the bolter and the shotgun. So then, the veterans with the frag cannons can choose to have either a bolter or shotgun in addition, but you're not probably worrying too much because they're always going to use their frag cannon. Then I've got another unit that's very similar to this unit, except this unit only has 2 frag cannons in it. The idea being that frag cannons are extremely powerful and polarizing, but they're also very expensive, and you probably don't need that many of them. You're going to be getting a lot of use just from normal special ammo as well. So I think this unit just has the 2. So this unit will combat squad all the time, basically, to be able to distribute 2 frag cannons in one location and then shoot, the 5 special ammo bolters elsewhere. The drop pod in this unit, I've given a locator beacon. I've spread a few locator beacons through my list. You can see the first one, obviously, that beacon Angelus, but then I've got one on this drop pod for basically the Terminators that come down from turn 2 onwards. Then my third pod unit is the unit that, as I discussed, my HQ's going. This unit has got 6 veterans, and I've got 2 storm shields and 4 plasma guns. So the way I would do it is pretty much have the storm shields not on the models that don't have plasma guns, for the reason that they're my more ablative models. They will be the models that my Watch Master can look out sir onto. For example, if I get shot with a gun that will ID the Watch Master, so like melters, if I take a couple of melter hits, they all get lookout sir to the storm shields. So the storm shields provide a little bit of longevity for that squad. So in between the TWAP Armor Save multi-wound model and the storm shields, I feel like it's quite good. I've run units like this before. I've run units with Mephiston and storm shields, and they're more survivable than they seem. So that's how that unit will roll. There's the plasma guns to make use of the mission tactics. Rerolling ones is pretty good. There's the option to roll the librarian for prescience. There's also the capability of just going telepathy for, psychic shriek and things like that. Maybe try and get invisibility. Invisibility would be really good on this unit as well. Or you could roll for endurance as well. There's a lot of options. Or you could roll on something like Librarius, try and get Veil of Time. So I think it just really depends on the situation. But overall, I think with this Libby, you're going to be looking at defensive powers. So whether you're going for telepathy or endurance or Veil of Time, it doesn't really matter, but he will be a defensive kind of style Libby. Then I've got as my 4th troops unit, because I do have the double CAD, so these are 4 troops over 2 CADs. I've just gone with 5 veterans with 1 storm shield. That should not be plural. And that's in a drop pod. So as you can see, I've got 4 drop pods so far. So I did need to take a fast attack drop pod to bring it up to 5. So I can bring down my 2 10-man veteran units and my 6-man veteran unit with my ICs on turn 1. So I will, if these units do combat squad, I will have a total of 5 veteran units on the field that have dropped down very accurately due to the Beacon and Jealous potentially. So the first unit with the plasmas will drop. They will scatter, but they will be very aggressive with their drop. And then following them, I will have the other units that can drop more accurately if I need them to. I think if this list, with this particular list, I've challenged myself to only make pure Deathwatch for the sake of kind of showing how you can run pure Deathwatch. But I think it would be good, to run Servo Skulls in a list that's using this many Deep Strikers. I think that would be a wise move to do. Then I've got my Terminators, my elites. And the reason why I've gone with double CAD, the reason why, as we kind of said earlier, why I kind of gave up the Black Spear Strike Force, why I gave up the Doctrines and the additional mission tactic was for this little play that we're making. Now, this play may work out to be not great. And, you know, if I trialed this over a few games and felt like the Terminator MSU was not very good, then I would just simply perhaps transition to a CAD and a kill team, and a Black Spear kind of style, because I think that, for example, these plasmas would be pretty good. The plasmas and the Watchmaster and stuff would be pretty good in a kill team, because then you could throw maybe a Terminator in there as well. But the reason why we've done it is to have the 6 Terminators. So how have I run the 6 Terminators? I've gone 2 with Cyclone missile launchers, and these ones are basically designed to sit backfield. So these ones wouldn't deep strike. They are good because they're relentless. You can deploy them behind cover so that they are invulnerable to first turn shooting from your opponent's backfield. Deploy them behind cover in the same way that I've used Dark Reapers as well. Dark Reapers are good because they've got slow and purposeful, so they can come out, they can deploy behind cover and then move out and shoot. The Terminators deploy defensively behind cover on an objective backfield. Then in your turn 1, they come out, move 6, get a good angle, and they shoot their 2-shot missile launchers. So these guys, 65 points, you're getting 2 missile launcher shots with an effective range of 54 inches. I think that's pretty good. I think it's good because the firepower is very relevant. You know, double missile launcher shot is very relevant, and it's also maneuverable, which is something that Devastators don't have that ability to move. And it's also, I think, good because it gives the Deathwatch Elite Army some backfield objective holding. So if you do place an objective, you know, kind of discreet and you know, isolated in a backfield, you can put a Terminator on it and feel like you've got that objective. Your opponent has to invest something to get it. And if you really need that objective isolated, like you, for example, if you're playing ITC and you draw capture objective 1 in your backfield card and you want to cap it, and that objective's out of line of sight, what you can do is, if you want to make sure your opponent can't push you off your objective so you don't cap it at the start of your next turn, you can just move your Terminator out of line of sight again. You can forego the shooting and guarantee that you're going to get that objective. So the Terminators are a good way of holding the backfield for a reasonable cost, while also giving you some contributing, you know, DACA at the back. Then I've gone with a Terminator with an auxiliary melter on his power fist. For 10 points, I think the melter is good. It gives you the drop threat with mission tactics and rerolling 1s. Obviously, it helps. You know, it gives you drop threat against vehicles. It means your opponent has to consider the angles on certain things. And, you know, we've all been in situations, we've all seen how powerful single melter shots are. Even against things like Predators and Vindicators, they're good because even a pen, even if it doesn't explode, a pen result is almost always going to force an opponent's vehicle to snap fire. It's always going to have an effect. So I like that. I like the auxiliary melter. And obviously he retains his power fist, so then he's a threat in following turns as well. Garen Branitar, I mentioned earlier, is for 10 points more than the auxiliary melter. He gets it's you know, mastercrafted, which is great. He also gets a mastercrafted power fist and the mastercrafted the twin-linked heavy flamer as well. So he's really good for 60 points. Then I've gone with 2 Terminators with assault cannons, and these guys are my kind of mid, like they support the kill teams. They come down and they can generally deep strike accurately because I've got the beacon and Jealous. I've got a locator beacon on that drop pod. I also have a locator beacon on GTEC Subarai, so they will hopefully find a way to accurately deep strike, come down, contribute their assault cannon shots, and then they're threatening assaults the following turn as well. So then, as I said earlier, I've got my fast attack drop pod to bring me up to 5. I also have GTEC Subarai. For 40 points, he's basically a moving locator beacon that's got a power sword. He's got hit and run. He's just an annoying little model that a lot of the time on turn 1, he's probably just going to move and flat out out of line of sight somewhere to basically act as a locator beacon for the Terminators. But then the following turn, he can move 12 and try and assault something. So these kind of models are definitely going to be looking for turn 2 volleys and turn 3 assaults. So this guy won't be doing anything on turn 1 most likely, but on turn 2, all of this stuff will be shooting. Or not all of it, the stuff that comes in from reserves. But bear in mind that they're going to be on the table. So I'll be making 4 reserve rolls, in addition to obviously that kill team as well. And then they'll be attempting to contribute via combat and shooting. So that rounds out the 1850. So it's a pretty small army. It's a very elite army. And how would this be played against the top tier of ITC? So if you kind of look at the ITC metagame and we kind of say the top tier ITC, we see a lot of things like Riptide Wing Tau armies. We see a lot of Eldar MSU, with just jet bikes and things like warp spiders and stuff. How would an army like this deal with the power of that top tier? Other top tier armies are things like Battle Company as well. I think this army, I'm not going to say it struggles against the top tier, but I definitely don't know if I could successfully smash those armies regularly. I think the strategy you'd be looking to do would just be to drop combat squad and just have a big alpha strike. You're looking for a big alpha strike with your special ammo. And I think it's quite achievable in many situations. Depending on deployment, depending on positioning, these guys can do a lot of damage. Things like warp spiders, right? Like warp spiders are a really powerful unit, but vengeance rounds shred them. AP3 on special ammo turns bolters from being pretty mediocre against warp spiders to devastating. If your opponent's warp spider unit does not flicker away enough, and you can somehow get rapid fire into them, you'll remove the unit a lot of the time. And that to me, and that's the same against Eldar jet bikes as well. So the Eldar jet bikes are going to need to jink, which is already really hitting their scatter laser DPS for the next turn. So I think if the right positioning and the right the right strategy and target priority, that the MVP in these units is not so much the frag cannons as it is just the special ammo. But the frag cannons obviously are really, really good as well. Frag cannons hitting Eldar jet bikes are going to be very powerful. Frag cannons hitting Riptides are going to be putting the wounds on as well. So I really feel like we can push through, those high quality units. I think if you're versing, say, a Riptide Wing that does have Interceptor on all the Riptides, a lot of them will. The Storm Shields you're going to be hoping you pass those Storm Shield saves. You're going to be trying to force your opponent to use Interceptor. And I think with this much Dakar, your opponent will kind of, I think, use Interceptor on the Riptides he thinks is going to be targeted. So if you're putting your opponent in a position where you've dropped on one Riptide or a couple of Riptides, your opponent's going to kind of think, okay, well, those Riptides are probably going to die if I don't intercept with them, so I will try to. So what you want to do if you're versing a Riptide Wing with this army is drop your units in positions that threaten multiple Riptides simultaneously, so your opponent can't just decide, that Riptide's going to die, so I'm going to intercept with that one. So you want to put him in a position where if he intercepts with Riptide A, but not Riptide B, then you shoot at Riptide B, so that if you do kill it, you've eliminated something that can shoot next turn. So positioning is really important with drop pod armies. Two players that play this list, someone that's playing this list without the kind of the ability to deal with threats in the right order will just get creamed. Whereas if you know how to spread your damage, weapons like special ammo bolters and frag cannons are very, very good. The plasma is obviously really threatening. If there is a unit of Riptides, putting the plasmas into a unit of Riptides is good, so that if you do get a bit of overkill, if you happen to kill a Riptide and push through, you can push through a couple of wounds to the next one. So I feel like, I think that the units, the army's got the capability of doing the damage it needs to do, but it's also very, very fragile. So it needs to be played well. I think it's. I'm not going to go as far as to say this is as good as a Skyhammer drop. I think a Skyhammer drop list might be even more aggressive. But what this list does do very powerfully and successfully is these models are not just good with shooting. Like a lot of these models, obviously they've got their veteran Space Marines, they've got powerful combat abilities, and if you do get a veteran, like a unit of veterans, combat squad of veterans stuck in combat, that's what the kind of Terminators are for. The Terminators are there to be able to assault and kind of free them out of the combat through use of obviously their power fists. So all in all, I think it's a pretty strong list. I would have fun playing this list. I think I would quite enjoy playing it in a competitive manner and seeing how successful it could be. This is not necessarily a list I would take to a ITC event. I think if I was to attend an ITC event, I would probably spread in some allies to this to try and make it a little bit more competitive. But I definitely think that this has the capability of beating powerful lists. Just as a little aside, I did run this through Community Comp. It comes in at 10 Community Comp credits. We pay 3 credits for the 3 first turn pods. We pay 3 credits for our veterans that can board pods, because the way that they've comped that is that veterans are C1 as of the 2nd unit that can board pods. So my 3rd veteran unit in a pod pays 1 credit, and my 4th veteran unit, which is unfortunately a pretty small unit, but I have to take it because of the the way it works out, I pay 2 comp. So I pay 3 comp for my veterans in pods. Then I pay a comp for frag cannons, because I have 6 frag cannons spread over the list. Then I pay another comp for that unit of 4 frag cannons in a pod. That one comes in at a comp as well. And then the Beacon Angelus is 2 credits. In this particular list, I couldn't avoid... and I also pay... sorry, I've stuffed that up. I also pay for the Terminators. So in this particular list, I actually am only allowed to have 2 heavy weapons, but I have 4, so I would pay an additional 2 credits. So it would be an additional 2, right? So plus 2 for heavy weapons on Termies. So that would actually come in at 12 comp. So if I was playing a community comp event, how would I reduce this list's comp score? Well, what I would probably do is, obviously I wouldn't be prepared to pay the Terminator cost, so I'd have to drop 2 of these heavy weapons. What I would probably just do is change the Cyclone. I'd either change the Cyclone missile launchers to just melters again and just run these just like the auxiliary melter units, or I would kind of leave them as they are and change the assault cannons to auxiliary melters. So I would probably just keep 2 of these or 2 of these and avoid paying those 2 credits. And then I also feel that the Beacon Angelus is not worth 2 credits in this context. It definitely can be worth 2 credits if it's used in a more synergistic, high-powered way with allies. But in this kind of situation, when all I'm really going to be teleporting around are small vet units, it's not really worth 2 community comp credits. So if I was playing a CC event that was, let's say it was a 8 cap event, I would drop 2 credits off the Termies, and I would drop 2 credits off the Beacon Angelus and spend those points maybe on another bike or something like that. So the list is definitely adaptable for community comp. I can run this at about 8 credits, which I think is pretty good. I think in an 8 credit format, I think this list would definitely put people to the test. All the shotguns, all the templates, ignores cover, definitely has power in certain contexts. A lot of people will look at this list and just feel abused by the power of the Deathwatch specific weapons. But it'll also play lists and just get wiped off the table. So depends how it goes. But anyway, guys, thanks for making it this far. I hope I've given you a little bit of an insight into Deathwatch on how I'm planning to play it, as well as some of the little tricks and tips available. I would encourage you all to have a look and see how we go going forward. If any of you are interested in playing a game, I'd love to give you a game as well. And stay tuned as well for Menza Gaming's reviews of Trader's Hate as well as Angel's Blade coming soon. So thanks for watching, boys, and I'll catch you next time. Jeremy out.